Okay, I think we're good to go. All right, good morning everybody and welcome. My name's Ben Robinson. I'm representing AusMeet today, so I'll be hosting and guiding us through the Meet Messaging webinar. This is a webinar that's been put together in collaboration with the department, AMPC, MLA, AMIC, and of course the AusMeet team, and supported by the expert Meet Messaging team behind that. So this is our list of presenters today. So it gathers representatives from each of those organisations. But the people you see on the screen there today will be the people that will guide us through the webinar. So again, representatives of AusMeet, MLA. We've got Des Bowler from Management for Technology, the underpinning expert team around Meet Messaging. We've got industry representatives, John Langbridge and Stuart Webb, representing both TEES and JBS. And we've got our two experts on the ground in the US as well, Doug McNichol representing MLA and Leonard Lang, who is our US industry consultant. So we'll get to hear from each of these guys today. So this just gives us a brief overview of the content of the webinar this morning. So I'll start with a short presentation, which will just be a very high-level overview of what Meet Messaging is. Then we'll delve a little bit deeper into how we implement the Meet Messaging system and some background information, and that'll be presented to you by Des Bowler. We'll then have a session where we bring in our industry experts, and that'll be Stuart and John Langbridge to talk about how they see it from their perspective on the ground. We will have a short Q&A session at the end, and then we'll wrap up just inside an hour with any luck. So just a very quick little piece of housekeeping before we kick off. So you'll all have your go-to webinar screen open, and on the left-hand side you should see the presenters. We'll turn our cameras on and off as we move through that. On the right-hand side, you also have a tab, and in a particular section of that tab allows you to be able to ask questions. So there'll be no verbal questions from the attendees today. So we invite you to put any of your questions into the question tab, not the chat tab, into the question tab, and that'll allow us to then, in that session that we have towards the end, be able to direct questions to the relevant person. And at the completion of this webinar as well, we'll also look to put together a frequently asked questions, which we'll post through all the appropriate websites. All right, so we'll get into the content of it. So we'll ask the very basic question to start off with: what is Meet Messaging? So we've got industry people out there that are using it as we speak. We're going to have people that are testing and using it in the background now, and we're probably going to have some people online today that are looking at implementing this system into the future. So the Meet Messaging system is a simple, secure, cloud-based industry portal. All right, so it is here to revolutionise how we transfer export documentation. All right, so first and foremost, it takes away all of the hard copy documents that we know in the past have caused inefficiencies in our system. So it allows the electronic transfer. All of the systems around the barcoding and the sending of messages are all underpinned by the GS1 global standard. So that's an important part to understand. And at the end of the day, it's here to authenticate, verify, and be able to trace our product for us and have all of that information at our fingertips. This just kind of shows you where Meet Messaging is at today. So it has been used for the past 5 years, and on average, as we sit here today, there is a little over 9,000 messages created, Meet messages created per month, and that was for the last 12-month period. And to kick off the first month of this period this year, there has been 15,000 messages created for the month of August. So that just gives you a bit of perspective on how many messages have been created. I'll let Des talk through a little bit more into some of the statistics in his presentation up next. So who uses the Meet Messaging system? So the system, most importantly, people have to be registered and approved to use the system. So primarily it's going to be Australian meat exporters looking to transfer their documentation electronically. It's going to be the inspection houses in our customer countries, and we're going to talk a lot about the US today. So inspection houses are going to be able to access your consignment information directly through the Meet Messaging terminal, And it can also be used by, and we'll say end users, and that is further processors, value add facilities that are receiving your product or sending product to the US in the first instance. And most importantly, government officials are going to have access to this information as well. All right, so key message out of all of that is that establishments must be registered and approved to use meat messaging. So this next little slide that I've got in here talks, and I think this highlights at the very highest level the benefits of meat messaging. The graph that's displayed in front of you here shows the number of claims since the start of meat messaging as we've tracked it back to the very start of 2018. And what we've been able to show during that period of time is a 75% reduction in the number of complaints or rejections for our product going into the US over that period of 5 years. So if you take away nothing else from today, 75% of your claims can be reduced by using the meat messaging system. And I'm sure I'm not showing anybody anything new here, but this is highlighting and giving you some descriptions around what the major rejection or reasons for that for product going into the US. And predominantly, the one that pops up the most is missing shipping marks, illegible shipping marks are the two most highest reasons for rejections for product going into the US. So why are we releasing this now? Well, as I said before, the system has been used for the past 5 years. It has been an industry-funded program, and at the very embryonic stages of meat messaging, we can date back to almost 20 years. But the system, as you see it today, and as it's grown over the past 5 years, we will be implementing from October 1 this year a system that is usable across the industry, and it will be managed by AusMeat at that point in time. So some other questions though get raised here, and it talks about why do we do this now? Well, we know that the department put out a market access advice late last year, and that advice revolved around the fact that the department were no longer going to provide remarking services. So we know in the past we've had representatives of both MLA and the government who have provided the services on the ground in the US for us to make any corrections or amendments to our products. All right, and so what happens now is all of your remarking can be managed by the inspection house in the US through the meat messaging system, and that's enabled by having that information directly at their fingertips. It's also supported by the USDA in the States as well through their FSIS program, and that program recognises meat messaging as a way for the transfer of documentation for products going into the US. So what that allows us to be able to do is it allows us to not have representatives from foreign governments to supervise any shipping marks and remarking that may need to be done. They can pull all this information that they need to validate the consignment from the meat messaging system. But most importantly, the country, and we'll say Australia in this instance, has to have an approved system in place that is meat messaging, all right, and FSIS maintain a list of approved establishments to ensure that they can verify the product eligibility. So as an industry program, it has been deemed by the industry that AusMeat will manage this, will manage the meat messaging system on behalf of industry, and that's done through the Australian Meat Industry Language and Standards Committee, which is made up of representatives right across the industry, as shown in that little diagram in front of you there. So from October 1, there will be a subscription and usage model for meat messaging. So that involves both an annual subscription. So for active users, they will be billed during this month, actually, prior to the October 1 release date, and that subscription will be renewed each year in January at a cost of $500 plus GST. And then from there, the billing system will revolve around how many messages you create as an exporter. And there are two different levels of message that you will pay for. There's number one, an integrated message, and you'll pay $1.50 for each message you create. And then there's a non-integrated message, of which you will pay $15 per message that you create. So I'm going to let Des talk a little bit later about what the difference between integrated and non-integrated means. And those messages that you are creating each month will be billed appropriately by AusMeat at that point in time. All right, so kind of in summary, before I wrap up the high level stuff, one of the key messages that we want people to take away from today is the 8 key steps to implementing an integrated meat messaging system into your business. So number 1 is to register with meat messaging first through the website. It's to work with your systems vendor on site to ensure that you have all of the data structured in such a way that the meat messaging system can handle. It's to ensure that you're registered with GS1 so that you can apply the standard barcodes and message systems. You need to ensure that your work practices and production systems are compliant, again, with meat messaging. So that involves reviewing your work practices and changing where required. You need to be able to develop a QA monitoring system that ensures that practices on a daily basis are as per the system that you have put together and had approved. Part of this process then will be to test the meat messaging system. You'll run it in parallel with your current system for a period of time until you can show that you're competent to use the meat messaging system appropriately. And the final step of that process will be that it'll be integrated into your approved arrangement with the department, and then you will go on to a list to say that you are registered to use meat messaging. Okay, so that's it from me to kick us off today. So I'll now hand it over to Des Bowler. He's our guru on the meat messaging team, and he's going to talk through in a little bit more depth some information about implementing the system. So I'd like to call on Des. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ben. So let's talk a bit more depth. Now, we're probably reiterating and doing a bit more of a deep dive on what Ben covered. So let's talk about who those users are in a bit more detail. In terms of the Australian export listed establishments, we have processors, we have NPEs, our non-packer exporters, we have cold stores, and we have freight forwarders. When we think about what happens in terms of freight forwarding, we have an air freight shipment. The freight forwarders end up finalising the health certificate and generating the health certificate. So all of those participants in terms of export are needed. We have our importing country facilities. Now, whether they're the US, FSIS US inspection establishments or whether they're in other countries, they follow the same model. We have meat buyers. We have Australian meat buyers who might buy products as NPEs, but then sell them to export markets. So they're quite complex process in that. We have retailers who buy product. We have the retailers in foreign countries who buy products. So meat buyers are key users of the system. Australian regulators. The regulators can log in and see all messages and all movements. So they can see all the product that an export establishment has received if they're doing EMTCs and or has sent out. They can see the lot. The importing country regulators, so FSIS can see into this in detail. So when we talk about this stuff, we can pick a carton of meat up anywhere in the world, carton of Australian meat, scan the barcode and trace it all the way back to the establishment it came from, even back to the low geographical locations where the livestock came from. So importing country regulators have visibility of this. Next, Ben. Okay, so let's look at it in the numbers. 226 organisations, except that's bigger now. We're now at about 230, 232. More companies keep registering. 30% of the FSIS import inspection establishments in the US, or 33%, a third, are registered to use meat messaging. So that's a fairly spectacular number. In the last 12 months, about 112,000 messages, 41.5 million cartons, 841 million kilos of Australian meat has been uploaded into meat messaging. So it's fairly large numbers. We're seeing 42 export establishments consistently uploading. Now, if you're using an EMTC and you're a cold store and all you were doing is receiving EMTC product, you can do the attestation, but we don't count you as uploading a message. All you've done is complete an attestation. Those who upload the message are the ones we count. All right, who uses it? A bit more detail in our import inspection establishments. Forward, Ben. Right. So when we talk about the import inspection establishments, what we're talking about those places where product is inspected before it's released into commerce. So those companies, if there's an issue with a shipment, there's a missing shipping mark, there's something that doesn't quite look right. Is this carton meant to be part of this shipment? They simply log into Meet Messaging. They then use the barcode off a carton, off a pallet, the health certificate number, they search, and it comes up with a complete shipment manifest. All the carton barcodes, all the grouping layers. If it has CL content, it can show the individual CL content of each carton, certificate of analysis, all that information, product description is available to them. So simply put, you log in, you scan, you see the result. Now, for fully automated organizations and technologically skilled, they can use APIs and other ways to interrogate. So what's it look like along the supply chain? Now, this is our export supply chain. So we have our livestock. And now with livestock, we talk about NLIS as the traceability. So on farm, tracking animals. Once we get to slaughter, chilling, boning, and we're generating cartons, this is where the GS1 standards apply. This is where Meet Messaging starts to come in. So if you click Ben, you'll see these three uses of it. We use Meet Messaging for domestic messages. So I'm sending product to a retailer, it's leaving the export chain, it's never going to get back into the export chain, we send a domestic message. That product has left the export channel. It's very important to understand that. We do EMTC, so we replace the paper MTC with an electronic EMTC. We now send that data electronically. Now at that point, we also talk about doing attestations electronically. So the bit of paper is gone, and those organisations that have implemented it have actually gone fully paperless. They no longer print MTC because it's all sitting in the cloud. Any carton can be scanned and immediately all the manifest information brought up. So from the government's perspective, it's very secure, it's very available because I can scan a carton and bring up every bit of information. Then we also do our export messages. So any product that leaves the country goes up in an export message, whether that's through air freight, freight forwarder, packing a shipping container, however it leaves the country, there's an export message. So it's very important to understand there's three messages. What's it look like on the other end when it arrives? Click again, Ben. So what we see is the importers, they then can see the shipment and carton search. Search a carton, search a health certificate, search a message SSCC, get an advanced shipping notice, get all that information in advance so they can verify that every single carton that they look at is part of that export shipment. That's the core of this. We're able to demonstrate that level of traceability, that level of robustness and security to say that carton is part of that shipment, not just has it got a port mark, it's is that barcode part of that shipment. What does it actually do? Now we talk about the nuts and bolts. What I just described is it's checking the shipment is what it's meant to be. So when I open a container and there's 700 cartons or 1100 cartons or 1400 cartons or whatever the number is, I want to know each and every one of those cartons are the ones that are meant to be in that shipment. Now, shipping marks historically was a quick stamp put on a box to say you're meant to be there. But the very process of that is error prone. It's human based, has lots of errors. The barcode is the electronic record from the inventory system to say they're the cartons I sold. They're the cartons I should have shipped. They're the cartons they should be looking at the import facility. They can get all that information electronically, and that traceability, as I said before, scan a carton of Australian meat anywhere in the world and be able to bring up the logistics information right back to the plant that made it and right back to the individual postcodes and pics of the animals that went into that production run. All that information is available. Product description, production claims, raising claims, all that information is available. We can also talk about using the pallet protocol, which allows us to send these products without a shipping mark at all. And that's another feature that we can do in Meet Messaging. So what is it? So as Ben said, we treat it as a big secure filing cabinet in the cloud. So every time a message is uploaded, it goes up into the cloud. So click and we'll see our little animation there, Ben. We'll see our little scan the barcodes. get the barcodes, send it to the cloud. It's as simple as that. However, it relies on your IT systems, your inventory management systems, all of your systems to do this. I had someone ask me and said, can I manually do a meet messaging message? And the answer is no, because we're trying to remove the people. We're using technology, your inventory systems, to manage the product, not people trying to make sure they put manual marks on. It doesn't replace your current IT system. It doesn't contain any commercially sensitive information. There's no prices. There's none of the information that is commercially sensitive. What if you're authorized to have a carton in your hand, you're authorized to see the information about that carton. It's all about logistics information. Doesn't replace Xdoc, works with Xdoc. Xdoc generates our health certificate. I have a shipment on this date with 700 cartons on this shipment, this voyage, this vessel, this health certificate. Xdoc. These are the individual 700 carton barcodes, and these are the product descriptions, production claims, certificate of analysis, all that minute detail, meet messaging. The two work together. Next slide, Ben. Now, as Ben said before, GS1 standards. We must be speaking a universal language. We must be speaking a common language. There was a joke John Langbridge shared with me some time ago. He said, you can have any two languages on a carton of meat. GS1 is one of them, and any other language you want, because the barcode is now how we sort products in our new automated facilities. Barcodes are how we scan to manage inventory. Barcodes are how we scan to load containers. So we're now describing the product through the barcode. No one's reading the human readable language anymore because a machine is doing it. So we must make sure we do this correctly. We must make sure that every barcode on every carton is scannable. Otherwise, we lose the identification and traceability. Next slide. Ben, you're good? Great. How it works for export establishments. Plant IT systems upload the carton barcodes and consignment details. That's it. Now that might sound really, really simple. The problem with a lot of implementation is suddenly existing plant systems don't have the information in them. I talk to plants and go, well, you need your health certificate and you need the shipment, the voyage, container number, seal number, all those things we talk about. And they go, I don't have that in my system. That's done manually on an Excel spreadsheet. That isn't going to work. The only way this works is if your inventory loadout production system contains all the information about the consignments. So there's a lot of work done with IT systems. There are 3 different message types, and it's really important to understand that. There is a domestic message, leaves the export channel. You upload to meet messaging all domestic channels. The cartons that have left export, the department can see 10,000 cartons this month left our establishment for domestic. Those cartons are never, ever, ever going to be exported. We then have EMTC messages. Every time products leave your establishment and go to another export establishment, there is an EMTC done. The receiving export establishment completes an attestation and says this product has now arrived, and it is correct. Then we have our export messages. Those messages get uploaded every time a carton leaves. So when all the information is available in the plant system, the health certificate number, the consignment, the voyage, the vessel, once all the information has been entered, the plant IT system is triggered to upload the message. You don't upload the message before you put the cartons in the container. You don't upload the message before you have a container number. Once you've got all the information, the message is uploaded. When it's done right, when it's correctly done, the exporter, the plant doesn't even see meet messaging. It's all done by the plant system. Loadout guys complete all the things, export docs guys do all their things. Once it's all finished, they hit go and it's sent. So meet messaging is invisible when correctly implemented. Next slide. Well, what are the benefits? We want to talk about some of these benefits. Benefits and problem solved. Okay, 12 months ending 30th of June, we talked 32,000 EMTCs had been uploaded by 10 establishments that are doing the EMTCs. Our previous projects worked out, going back 10, 15 years ago, it was about $25 in labour to prepare an MTC, to send it off, to then chase it up, get the attestation back, match the attestation to the original, file them, keep them on file so when the department looks, you can demonstrate it. When we've been talking to companies more recently, they're talking that's closer to $50. So when Ben spoke about a billing, we talk about the EMTC is going to cost you about $1.50 and your whole computer system is going to do it. No one's going to manually do stuff. Paper MTCs cost about $2.50 to buy the books at the moment. So when we had those 10 establishments over the year, that's about $800,000 or about $80,000 per establishment just doing that. Now we've got about 175,000 paper MTCs printed a year. That was a figure we got from the department years ago. So if all these were replaced to use EMTCs, we're talking about a $4.5 million industry saving at $25. At $50, that's closer to $9 million. So it is a big industry saving we can achieve by doing this. Next slide. So when we talk about US rejections, Ben showed you where we see this big drop. Now these are the specific numbers. So 12 months ending 30th of June 2018, 6,149 rejection notices issued. For the 12 months to the 30th of 2022, 3,291. So you can see about half for over a 4-year period on those. So we see this big drop. Almost all of this is to do with the adoption of Meet messaging. Every establishment that has gone through and adopted Meet messaging has looked at loadout and gone, oh my goodness, look at all these bad work practices we've had. And the very fact of implementing Meet messaging has improved many of their internal company workflows because they realize all of these problems they have. Next slide, Ben. So big picture. In the big picture, we talk about drastically reducing the time and cost taken to prepare and complete EMTCs. No brainer, just got to do it. Ability to remark damaged or missing shipping marks in the US, that's worth millions. When we did some of the maths, it's up to about 200 million a year industry saving just by doing that. Ability to send product to the US without shipping marks when you use the pallet protocol. That's even bigger saving. That's for some product classes, that could be hundreds of millions in labor saving when we go from taking about 6 or 7 hours in the US to do the remark, to do stamping because of 700 cartons and inspection, to doing it in a few minutes. Massive protocols improvements. Potential to reduce our annual DAF audits. In some conditions, moving to EMTC, when you talk about automated inventory, that allows the reduction of audits. Again, big savings. Maintain market eligibility on a carton level. Because we track all the cartons, we actually know all the establishments they've been through. So we actually know a market eligibility on a carton level. And as I said before, scan a carton of meat anywhere in the world of Australian product, and you can see all the information right down to knowing the production runs, and from the production runs being able to show the geographical locations the livestock came from. Next slide, Ben. Now we're going to quickly run through these the 8 steps. Ben spoke about them before, but let's nut them out in a bit more detail. Register with Meet messaging. You're going to have your GS1 numbers, carton barcodes, who your company, authorized company officials are. You have to notify your trading partners you're going down this journey. You implement EMTC and don't tell the establishments you're sending it to that you've implemented EMTC. It's going to be a bad day. You have to work with your trading partners, telling them you're doing this. You have to work with your system vendors. Ensure you can interface with Meet messaging. You must have all that information in your system. If you don't have the health certificate, container number, voyage and vessel, or any RFP number, any of that other information in your system, how can you upload that information to Meet messaging? So it must be in your system. So there's a lot of work with your system vendors. That's the core of this. Next, Ben. As Ben said, register with GS1. If you cannot generate a company prefix on your message numbers, on your carton barcodes, on all your steps, we can't identify you globally. GS1 is merely a tool to be able to give you a company prefix which is globally unique. So when I look at a company's carton barcode, anybody in the world can scan that barcode and say, oh, that's Australian manufactured product, that's made by this company, because it's in the barcode. And the only way that works is with GS1 registration, so you have to do it. Next, Ben. Now, one of those points I said before is when people start actually trying to do this, they suddenly find there's a lot of work practice issues. You go, where do you record your domestic? Oh, we don't really, it's just recorded in inventory, but we don't actually scan domestic out, we just sort of load it. And you suddenly go, no, not okay. You're scanning that product out, either as pallets or as individual products. So there's a lot of workflow changes that happen when we start implementing. We talk about when the message has to be uploaded. It has to be uploaded at the right time. Or when's the right time? When you've got all the information. So there's a number of steps we have to work through with that. Health certificate numbers must be added. They may be added by the NPE or the processor. They're things you have to work through in your implementation. Next slide. Okay, we've got to review all our work practices. As I said, making sure we've got all the right information, got the right message constructs, generating and sending it out, picking, staging, scanning, port marking, palletizing, all of those steps suddenly are impacted by meat messaging. So suddenly we've got QA over all sorts of things that they've never looked at before. Next slide. So we talk about QA monitoring. If you are generating barcodes on your cartons and they're not scannable, you shot yourself in the foot. So suddenly QA have to be actively involved in what does that carton label look like? Is that barcode scannable? How do I verify that all the 700 carton barcodes that go into that container are actually the ones for the audit? We talk about a QA monitoring program that is quite regimented to ensure that this is all working correctly, because now we're relying on the systems to do it. Testing, turn it on, get it started, get products being uploaded. Like with every department reviewed system, you have to show them evidence of it working. And the way you show it evidence of it working is you actually use it. At the same time as that, you're working with your trading partners to say, we're doing this. Are you able to get this? Is this working? Can you do this EMTC? When you talk to your export market partners, are you going, are you registered for meat messaging? Are you checking? Are you able to get a health certificate? Search for it. Can you see our shipments? All of these are the testing phase. Now that might take a couple of months to implement. Next slide. So the last step, once all that's in place, your approved arrangements are updated to show that you're using meat messaging in the different steps. You apply to the department and they go, look, I can see you using it. You've been using it for 2 months. I can see all these messages. Your approved arrangements are updated to reflect what's happening. Once all of that is in place and you're dealing with your trading partners saying, yes, our trading partners are able to complete the attestations on the EMTCs, so thumbs up. Once all that's in place, the department will approve you for FSIS for the US shipments. You then get put on the FSIS SharePoint. You're then able to use meat messaging to resolve missing and shipping damage marks in the US market. So it's all about involving the department once you're ready to show them you're using it. So I think that's it for me, Ben. I've wrapped up and done a quick walkthrough. I hope everybody's got something out of it. Back to you, Ben.
Thank you, Des. That's greatly appreciated. Thanks for your time. So Des is the resident expert on meat messaging and all the inner workings. So we appreciate your time today. Thank you very much, Des. So I'm going to invite now both John Langbridge and Stuart Webb to come forward. I think Stuart's kind of prepared himself first. So these guys are the guys working at the coalface every day. JBS&Ts have done a lot of the groundwork over the last 5 years to bring this system to where it is and a manageable system for the entirety of the industry. So without further ado, I'll hand it over to Stuart and he can talk you through some of the benefits from JBS's perspective. Thank you, Stuart.
Yeah, thanks very much, Ben. Good morning, everyone, and thanks for coming. Good opportunity this morning to get some insight from on the ground around how meat messaging has been benefiting JBS as an industry. So I reached out to a lot of our shipping clerks and collaborated a lot of the notes and listed some, I suppose, repeated feedback that I got from the shipping clerks in terms of how the system has been benefiting them. So our main point is eliminating product waste. That is a big focal point to what meat messaging is achieving. Better traceability of our product, which Des outlined pretty heavily. The simplicity of the system, automation, accuracy, direct saving on paper MTCs. So as Des mentioned, it's around $2.50 odd for MTCs. And also the integration of EMTCs into the same system. So as a business that does a lot of internal transfers and domestic transfers, it's a large saving to JBS specifically. And I suppose the most indirect benefit is time saving. So not just on site, but also in the US where errors can be fixed in real time, and also at a corporate level processing less claims. So we did a bit of a practice run earlier in the week, and I went away and I thought, how can I really reflect how this has saved time for me specifically? So I went back through my files, and without going into too much detail, it takes around 5 minutes or so at my level to verify and approve a claim. So back in 2020, I spent around 1,000 minutes across the year processing shipping mark claims specifically. In 2021, it was around 800 minutes. I think we started to integrate meat messaging late 2021. This year, year to date, we're 9 months in. I worked out I've only spent around 100 minutes on shipping mark claims specifically. So as our corporate quality assurance officer and probably any other quality members on the call, we're very time poor. So this is, a very good indirect saving to me specifically. So it's it's been a very good benefit. Next slide, please, mate. So eliminating product waste, I think this is one of our largest focal points as to what the system can achieve. So just to give you some insight, in a 13-day snapshot, our customers informed us of 116 cartons that were remarked using the system. And this would have had a direct saving of anywhere from $30,000 to $50,000 that otherwise would have been destroyed, because as mentioned at the start of the presentation, that MLA no longer provides that remarking service. So these products would have otherwise been destroyed. So it's it's a really good saving. Next slide, please, Matt. Better traceability, simplicity, automation, accuracy. As Des outlined, there's multiple ways to search it up in the system. You can access it via directly on the website. You can scan it on an app, on an iPhone or a Samsung. It's very easy. The feedback that I got from our shipping clerks was, taking away the paper and, that human error aspect of writing out paper MTCs. It's just, it's irreplaceable at this stage. The main feedback was that I'll never go back to paper. So that's a really good one. Next slide, please. So I just want to talk a little bit around the key pillars that I noticed that JBS used to integrate the system. Communication, that's a big thing. Internal, not just amongst if you're multiple establishments, but external as well to your customers. Let them know that you're moving to the system. Because they will need to update their approved arrangement to be able to, if it's domestic, to be able to attest EMTCs and the likes of that. Training, so it's not just site training, but also management, corporate, quality, IT. We all need to be on the same page. So I think that's a pivotal step in integrating the process. And also having someone own the program and having a champion for it at a site level. So that comes down to conducting verifications to ensure accuracy. So the trust in the system is only as good as the operators on the loadout docks getting it right. So that's very important. I've just got a final note down the bottom. As more export establishments utilize meat messaging, it does have that indirect on-flow effect that encourages US intake warehouses to sign up and use the system. So at the start, when JBS communicated, and T's would have done the same, communicating a lot of the integration of the system, a lot were not signed up, but once they are signed up, they're there. So any other establishments that come on to the system and more than likely use the same intake warehouses, it's a lot less of a process to let them know. If you communicate to them that you're using the system now, they would probably come back and say, yes, we're already on it. So it does have an indirect benefit that as more use the system, it benefits the whole industry. I'll pass over to John. Thanks, Ben.
Okay, thanks, Stuart. Just like to say, Stuart's probably given a pretty good detailed summary of a lot of the pluses and some of the integration issues. I've got a couple of slides. I'll probably just start more with a broader thing, because I suppose along with Des, we've been involved in this project literally from the outset, and previously I sort of similar history to Lenny Lang, worked for the government for a fair while, so we were actually involved in, I suppose, harmonising barcode standards back probably in the sort of the mid to late 90s. So got a lot of history in this space, I suppose you could call it. One of the things I'll just sort of emphasise that the system's entirely predicated on using existing global standards. So essentially what we're talking about is a tool that uses those standards, and that's been particularly good. So in terms of T's, we do have a number of supply chains and customers in North America that we now trade with paperlessly. So, and those of you that deal in that export area, particularly with all the different bills of lading and guarantees of credit and all those sort of things, there can be 40 to 50 different pieces of paper with load. So enabling them to be all integrated, and essentially messages just sent in the background, and all that information that's required by various people along the supply chain is all generated automatically and just fed to them as we do each load. So it's all very, very much integrated into our inventory and finance systems. So essentially, as I said, it's using a lot of the tools we currently already have. I think as an old regulator, I think it's pretty significant that it's driven off exactly the same data that we use when we apply through XDoc to get an e-cert. So there's a very strong link between the data in, all the product data in the load and in fact the electronic government health certificate. And as you guys know, the Australian government system interfaces with the USA system, which then, extracts information and sends to PHIS. So there's a very strong connection along that supply chain. So it uses basically what we already have. It runs off our existing inventory systems in plants, and when we produce an order, we start actually assembling the message upload that'll go into Meet messaging. As sort of Des has mentioned in one of his earlier examples, and when we're going to run a pretty active demonstration at an up-and-coming innovation seminar showing how this actually works on the ground, but it gives you a very direct link into the traceability system, because it's essentially generated by production data and inventory data. There's very strong ties in that traceability area, pretty well back to farms of origin. The other thing it does do, it allows different supply chain participants, who might actually have slightly different, I suppose, software systems, to basically share information and basically operate seamlessly together, because the only thing that needs to be structured in a uniform format's the information traveling between the two. So it allows different systems to interoperate, which I think is particularly important. So effectively, you can still use your own existing proprietary software, and which I think is a very, strong plus for this. Because of that, it's got known costs when you do it. So there's no new huge investments in any hardware or software. It's merely an addition of some new sort of applications to your existing systems. Next slide, Ben. Okay, I'll probably get into a little bit of the detail, just to give you a bit of an idea from a T's perspective. One of the things it does do, and this is really from the QA practices, it gives a far better focus on loadout practices. There's a regular internal audit that we conduct that we use Meet messaging. We actually do it with a process that's literally independent of our own inventory systems. So effectively, we replicate pretty well what happens in the US. We go around and we scan separately a single load every now and again just before it's containerized. We then compared the message we get from that QA process with the message already uploaded into Meet Messaging. So we effectively replicate what would happen in the US. So in terms of port of entry issues, that process has caused quite a large reduction in issues for Ts at ports of entry. The other advantage, I think, too, if the system's used at port of entry, if there are issues, so loads can be rectified in real time. We're not now needing to have to wait for a government official to come down from Washington or LA or somewhere to the port. This can now happen in real time, so the load's kept together, so there's basically no extra storage time or demurrage cost. So I think in that, and keeping those lots together is highly significant, particularly when you're thinking about raw ground components of grinding meat. That sort of those STEC sample lots, it's vital they stay together, as we all know. In terms of Ts, we've been involved in trials with this project for quite a number of years now, and even through the whole term of that, those 5 years, we've been sort of being a trial plant in a number of these projects. I think our total number of lost cartons due to problems with shipping marks is now, I think it's over the 5 years, just a little over 700 cartons. So we think that's a sort of a huge advantage. The system, from our perspective, the integration has paid for itself many times over. As I've already mentioned and probably emphasised a little bit on the previous slide, because it integrates with our production and inventory systems, traceability becomes quite a lot more simpler exercise. So if there is need to trace stuff either forward or backwards, it becomes very, very simple and very, very quick in this system. The other thing, and probably an added little benefit, in terms of things like those authorised economic operator programs, which in Australia Trusted Trader is one, and in the US CTPAT's the US version of the same thing, it satisfies those higher security requirements. The actual integrity of the products can be considered far better with that type of overarching visibility system in place. Ben, that's it from me.
Thank you, John. That's greatly appreciated, and thank you, Stuart. So that's some fantastic insights from the two biggest meat companies in Australia on the ground that have been using the program for a little on 5 years now. So the next section we'll head to now is our Q&A section. So we've got plenty of questions coming through here, and all I've got on the screen in front of you is all of the experts that are sitting here today, waiting to answer some of your questions. So I've just, as the webinar's gone on, I've just tried to get a few common themes, and as I said before, we've got plenty of questions coming in. So I'll throw across now to, I might actually bring Len Lang into this if you're there, Len.
Yep.
We've got a question about the challenges of the US. So there's two parts of this question. What are you seeing as the challenges in the US? And at the same time, are Australian companies able to see the approved list through FSIS for accredited facilities in the US as well? So is that something you can take care of, Len?
Yeah, but let me and thank you for inviting me. The challenge is, at the beginning when MLA gave up remarking, we were still coming out of COVID. There were some challenges with the staffing at import establishments, port backlogs, things of that nature that were causing some issues with companies wanting to jump on board with meat messaging and doing the remarking. But as we've moved forward over the last year, people have slowly grasped that meat messaging is a big help. It's a quick way to handle remarking of shipping marks or issues with problems with shipping marks. And it's catching on more quick. More people are looking at it as a solution. I think you have over 100, 150 import establishments in the US. Not all of them handle Australian product. And two big groups that are basically owned by two of the bigger, companies, corporations. And they've grasped it and are moving forward with it as well. The smaller ones, you have to approach individually. And the exporters or the importers have been a big help over the last month and a half, because they're requesting meat messaging as part of the requirements for an import establishment to handle shipments of imported product. So even before an import establishment starts handling imports, that importer is making sure they have access to meat messaging. As for the lists of eligible import establishments or eligible Australian establishments that are listed by USDA, DES goes and puts out these lists, and they're up to date and current. I've worked with several of the import establishments to keep them up to date on who is eligible. And if someone has a question on eligibility from an Australian establishment, I can always go back to USDA and get the answer. For import establishments, I think DES has an up-to-date list, and I think it's worth checking, looking at and verifying that they're on the list, because it makes your life simpler and solves a lot of problems if they're there.
All right, thank you, Len. That's greatly appreciated. Thanks for your experience, and thanks for staying up for us as well. That's greatly appreciated.
No problem.
I think I've got another question here, and I think I might direct this one to you, Des, just because you've got a visual on all of the data. It says, which other countries other than the US are we using meat messaging for?
Okay, in terms of stats for beef, depending on the month, it might be 90%, 85% of all product going into the US and beef is uploaded to meat messaging. On a global basis, that's about 50%. So 50% of all the product sent out of Australia around the world is uploaded to meat messaging. Now, both JBS and Tees have examples where in some of those other countries, the OD has happened and they've jumped on meat messaging to resolve the ODs. So operationally, it's utilized in other countries. Our difficulty, and this must be very, very plainly stated, there are certain markets overseas that if we raise the meat messaging statement, they will jump on it straight away and make it mandatory for everybody. So we really are in a catch-22. Unless everybody is using it, or 95, 99 sort of %, we're very scared to say it too loudly to some of these other importing countries. Because the moment we say it, they'll go, yes, please, thou shalt do it, and thou shalt all do it. So it's always been this chicken and egg problem. Do we raise it with the importing country and have the importing country go, this is a good idea, do it? Or do we wait for industry to catch up for these other countries and then say to the country, by the way, here's the solution for this problem? So the answer is yes, from a volume point of view, it's getting there. From a demand point of view, we're trying to be very softly.
Thank you, Des. There's another common theme here as well, and I'm going to direct this one to you again, Des. Who pays the $1.50 or who pays the $15 in the supply chain?
Well, what a good question. And you have the Osmeat hat in terms of the actual billing. He who raises the message, so he who sticks the message in the cloud pays the fee. So let's say what that actually means. So I am an exporter who has packed a container. I have got the health certificate. I have done all the paperwork. I raise the message. I will be billed the $15. Every step of the supply chain, even to the final end user, will download the message. They don't pay. So he who uploads the message pays. So commercially, what does that mean? I am sure those fees will sit there around and get passed one way or the other. If I'm a third-party cold store and I'm packing product into a container and picking cartons to pack, and I raise the message, I'm sure that's going to be a fee for service that will be billed either to the exporter or whoever's in that supply chain. So commercially, it'll be a commercial arrangement. As is the current situation in the US at the moment, there is technically the ability to for the import inspection facilities to bill for their services. And they bill historically for the remarking, for the sortation, for everything. So I am sure that people will always bill for their services. What we're saying is this is a much cheaper option than any other option by magnitude. When we first started this project, or first 2017, 2018, one of the big pushes in the US with it, we had the US cold stores, the guys telling us they were averaging 2 cartons per shipping container being thrown away. Now that's just horrifying. 2 cartons per shipping container was their average, thrown in the bin. Now, once we implement meat messaging, we reduce that dramatically. So yes, there will be a fee associated with it, but no matter what the fee, it's a fraction of the cost compared to the throwout. Hopefully that answered the question.
Thank you, Des. And we've got, and I think we've got enough time for one last question, and there's been a few around this, and it's talking about integrating meat messaging into other Australian data sources, and those being things like LPA, ENVDs, iLeader. So, I mean, I could say, from my end, I could say that would be a fantastic place to be, and I think that's kind of meat traceability utopia. But Des, where, again, I'm pointing this at you, where are we at today as far as any sort of integration, I'll say, at the livestock pointy end of the stick? John might be able to hear a little bit as well, possibly.
I'll toss the first part, and then it can be John and Stuart can talk at the operational. What we see in processing is we have our NLIS and we have our NVDs when we come to slaughter. So when I look at a kill agenda, I know the vendors that are in there, I know the number of head for each vendor. So I can go that this production run, when we get to the boning room, this production run has these 12 farms into it. This farm has 280 head, this farm has 75 head, this farm has 620 head. We know all that information. Meat messaging knows every carton that was produced out of that boning run. So yes, and this is what John alluded to, the tech's there and the system's there to be able to go, this carton was in this production run has these animals. So I can scan a carton and say, these farms supplied to those into that carton. Now, can I say how much of each animal's in which? When we talk cartons of trim, that's a bit ridiculous, right? So I ran 280 animals through a production run. Of that, I ended up with 600 cartons of trim. That 600 cartons of trim is made up of animals from all of that production run. So therefore, the 6 farms or 8 farms that went into that production run are in those cartons of trim. So when I put a shipping container of trim that is from 3 production days from 2 establishments like the T's and the JBS, it's from that many farms. That data's there. I can show you what percentage of makeup goes from what farms into the cartons, and I can show you the geographical location. So all that's linked. So there is a high level of linkage that is joined. John, Stuart, you got comments on that?
Sorry, mate, you go.
I was just going to say, I'm not too sure whether the project specifically on the RMSCC website, which is, I suppose, the overarching governance committee of this process, that it sits under actually the Ausmeat Language Committee. But we did do a project, I think there's memory from 2006, where we in fact actually tested all of that and showed it was actually, it could be actually operational. And in a sense, we know pretty well the identity of every animal to the pointed end as a boning room. Sometimes we actually, if you've got RFID trackers on your hooks, you can actually track it to boning room, boning tables, and then we know product leaves. And I suppose it depends on how well sequenced the boning room process is, but you can then basically narrow that the number of animals or the smaller group of animals that are potentially in a box to an extent. With some of the faster moving larger cuts, you can get down to it's 95% probable of being in that box there. So that work, Des, I think, did it back in about 2006. So it enables probably that degree of traceability if people believe they need it. And in fact, I think both JBS and T's, I think we're doing a bit of work around using CCTV and AI to track individual cuts through boning rooms to try to make that window of a window of traceback even smaller.
Yeah, so that's a bit of work that's happening at Longford at the moment, John, where they're trying to utilise CCTV and piece tracking down on the tables for better traceability. I suppose the only challenge there is that every establishment has that different time window from labelling back to the point of scanning into the voting room. So I'm sure a lot of people know that you capture a window. So whether we can make that window smaller with this kind of integration would be pretty good.
Yeah, I think just very quickly with the NVD, we're actually doing a little bit of work now with MLA around capturing that piece at the front end of this process, and then putting in the same database. The reason I sort of mentioned Des's project, Des actually sort of in a sense created that back in 2006 using some now old defunct bit of system called EDEC. So it actually is very possible to do this. And I think, look, and the guys at ISC are fairly well engaged in this process. So, hopefully we can sort of see that done more automated, in terms of the process. At the moment, we can actually create that by manually sort of moving information across, but as Des says, that's sort of fraught with a bit of danger. But I think it's a good plan, and I think, Ben, we're getting there.
Thank you, gentlemen. That's greatly appreciated. So I am conscious of everyone's time, and we have just ticked a minute over 10 o'clock. So we might just wrap ourselves up here. So I'd like first and foremost, I'd like to thank everybody that's online, everybody that's come and listened in today. We hope you've got something out of today. I'd like to thank all of our speakers, as I said before, both Doug and Len are sitting in the US. So we'll say good evening to them. But most importantly, I just want to leave you with this last key message. This is about implementing the system. All right, we talked about it at the start. Des gave us a good rundown as we went through in the detail. But the 8 key steps to implementing Meet messaging: ensure that you register through the website first and foremost. Work with your systems vendor to ensure that you're providing compliant data. All right, ensure that you are registered with GS1, the International Barcoding Standards. Ensure that your work practices and production systems are all in place to be able to handle the data transfer. That means that you're going to have a QA monitoring system in place that's going to oversee this whole thing for you. All right, there's going to be a phase where you're going to be testing Meet messaging alongside your own current processes and to iron out all of the challenges. Ultimately, that process is going to determine whether you become approved or not. All right, and the final step is the department actually signing off on your approved arrangement. All right, and being registered with the department is the point at which you can then move forward to be able to use the Meet messaging facility at its full capability. So, so last but not least, again, we'd love to thank everybody for their time, and I'll just throw in next week at the same time, we will be running the identical webinar. So next Thursday at 9 o'clock, we'll be going head to head again. So feel free to share that around. Invites will go out in the next day. But for more information, feel free to visit the Meet messaging website. It's an absolute ton of information. Every question you need answered, you will see there. But most importantly, out of today, we'll also put together, I said earlier on, a frequently asked questions, which we'll post through both the AusMeet website, through the Meet messaging website. And for those of you that want to see today's webinar again, we will also be posting that as well. So you'll have access to the slides and the conversation that we've had today. So without further ado, I'd like to thank everybody again and hope everyone has a great day. So thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thanks.